people who like to break things. We like things that are fixed and balanced.
The world is changing, business is changing, professional services is changing, probably even faster than some other industries. If you keep doing what you are doing, you're not going to be able to survive in the next year, 10 years, 5 years. Change and evolution is required.
It really depends on who you end up partnering with. That could mean private equity. So do your diligence. That could mean selling to a larger firm. That could mean taking on new partners. Just because somebody is a huge investment fund doesn't mean they can't be the right partner.
People still want to be in leadership roles. They think that some of their talent doesn't want to lead, and it's not that. It's that they don't want that ownership. They don't want the stress that comes with the ownership, that nobody wants to work 100 hours. Nobody wants to work 60 hours.
Profit definitely looks like money, but it also looks like being able to go to my kids' hockey games when I need to.
Human beings are not productive. They're not productive for more than 6 hours a day. Having your people work normal hours, letting them have a life, letting them refresh and recharge and come back, and they're going to be able to serve the firm better. They're going to be able to serve their clients better.
What about the use of core values, maybe in decision making? How does core values play into that and drive value?
Marketplace did such a good job in adopting this trusted advisor philosophy. People believe it. It's like one of the best marketing campaigns ever, and accountants aren't taking advantage of that, I think.
Welcome to Max Value, the show for business owners and their trusted business advisors who are on a mission to maximize their value with business valuation, exit planning, strategy, and maybe even defining what values really mean to you. I'm your host, Ben Town, and today I'm joined by Dr. Jessica Levin, an organizational leadership pro with 2 decades helping professional services firms grow. Jessica serves as Chief Operating Officer and North America Regional Director at Abacus Worldwide, or the Abacus Group, a global association of independent accounting and law firms. She runs 7 Degrees LLC and has recently published a book, Accounting for Times, with her co-author, Rachel Anevsky, about the changing environment for accounting firms and how to navigate it. Dr. Levin, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm sure I didn't do you enough justice, frankly. So why don't you give us a little bit more background and tell us how you got to where you are now?
How much time do you have? I'll give you the short version. I do a lot of different things. All that I've realized are connected to one another. But I've been in professional services for over 2 decades, working in-house as a marketing director, and working for several associations of law and accounting firms, including Abacus, and also consulting to the accounting profession, speaking on the accounting profession. And my doctorate, as you mentioned, is not just in organizational leadership and development, but my capstone was on strategies to recruit and retain accountants. And as mentioned, the book Accounting for Times. So you can say that I live and breathe the world of accounting. Even though I am not an accountant, I like to say I play one on TV. But I am very immersed in this. I do actually have some other hobbies too. I forget what they are, but I am. I'm in the world.
Well, I tell you what, the world of accounting is speaks the language of business. So I think it gives you a tie back into all businesses from that standpoint. The I'm a CPA, but gosh, I don't do any real accounting anymore. And at the same time, gosh, maybe you're more of an accountant these days than I am. You work with professional firms, and I do want to broaden it out from just accounting firms to law firms, and and possibly even beyond. And all the time you're looking at navigating big threats, navigating just kind of the tumultuous changing environment that professional firms have to operate in. We were talking about that book you just wrote, Accounting for Times, with Rachel Anevsky. I read it, by the way, really good. I would recommend it.
Thank you.
And we can put a link in the notes about that. But when somebody like me, a professional services firm owner, is reading this, what is the big takeaway that we should get out of the book?
Well, so the subtitle is "Evolve or Dissolve," and that is the takeaway that the world is changing, business is changing, and professional services is changing probably even faster than some other industries. And that's not just from the work standpoint, but culturally and from a talent standpoint. And if you keep doing what you were doing, you're not going to be able to survive in the next year, 10 years, 5 years. Really, change and evolution is required.
Well, and that's really interesting that you're saying it's moving faster than other industries, potentially other professions. Although, I would argue that it's just our time in a certain sense to change. And we're, having to do more catch up, if you will. Things like, say, one of my pet topics being outsourced and offshoring. Uh, that's something that we're grappling with now. But if you were a software development company, you did that 20 years ago, and we're now grappling with that that same idea.
Exactly. So it's not so much that I would not say that the accounting profession is ahead. It is just moving fast because it's catching up to some of the things that were not necessarily paid attention to because it's a regulatory environment. The work has been coming in, and there's a little bit of just being on autopilot and realizing that all of a sudden, wait, if we don't play catch up, we're going to be in big trouble.
And hubris can play into that, right? That thing. It's not like we're people who like to break things. We like things that are fixed and balanced. And again, I'm going to lump my lawyer friends into this as well. They're not going to necessarily be the people who are saying, let's try something completely new and break things and move fast and see what happens, because that doesn't work so well in law and in accounting, where you need to have reliable information, et cetera, et cetera. The stakes are too high to want to just break things.
Yeah, and first of all, I am a breaker. So, in fact, if you Rachel and I, when we did our photo shoot for the book, we actually went out on a golf course and started smashing bottles. So we were really trying to exemplify breaking the mold is really how we have framed it. But sure, you don't want to break your clients' financials or do anything like that. But from a structural standpoint, from a how you treat your employees, how you look at how you do business, there's a lot of things that can happen that have positively impact your work
Mhm.
without having any risk to the actual quality of the work on law and accounting.
Absolutely. And heck, breaking things is not a bad thing if what you are getting rid of is already broken. Uh, Working 100 hours a week is not something that is well sustainable, and that's something that we've had to, as professional service providers, have had to realize that maybe our talent pool is a little shallow because nobody wants to do that or get divorced 3 times or whatever it takes to become partner these days. Uh, or I guess no longer these days, yesterday.
Yes, and people don't want to become partner anymore. So we have a chapter in the book called "Partnership is Not the End Game," and it really stems from the fact that people still want to be in leadership roles, and sometimes firms confuse that, thinking, "I don't." I was just at the Abacus meeting last week, and we had talked a lot about this, and they said, we just don't understand because this is how we're brought up. We entered the profession, and partnership was what you did, and they think that some of their talent doesn't want to lead, and it's not that. It's that they don't want that ownership. They don't want the stress that comes with the ownership. And that's outside of the fact that nobody wants to work 100 hours. Nobody wants to work 60 hours. And human beings, no matter how much we think we could have done it, and we say, well, that's what we always did, are not productive. They're not productive for more than 6 hours a day. There are exceptions, but not those are really the anomalies. Humans, you might have somebody in the office on those 12-hour days, but what you're getting from them is not going to be better productivity. It's just not. There's lots and lots of studies that show that. And so this is a mindset change. And obviously, we talk about technology and AI, and the fact that so technology is allowing us to do more faster, significantly faster, right? Significantly faster. And for a mindset, thinking, okay, well, now we work those same hours, just getting that much more done. You still lose your people, you still burn your people out, rather than taking advantage of what the environment is, and having your people work normal hours, letting them have a life, letting them refresh and recharge and come back, and they're going to be able to serve the firm better, they're going to be able to serve their clients better.
Well, gosh, and I have so much reaction to all of that. Most of it positive, but I'm so much on both ends of that, both sides of that argument, right? As an employer, I'm thinking, gosh, I really hate the fact that you just told all my staff that they should only work 30 hours a week. On the other hand, actually that kind of aligns with our values, taking care of our people. And so yeah, yeah, as long as we're making money, profit can look like different things. In my case, personally, profit definitely looks like money, but it also looks like being able to go to my kids' hockey games when I need to, and that sort of thing, and having freedom along with the financial stability. Whereas I'm sure I could have even more financial profitability if we did things differently, but I don't
Mhm.
want to. Uh, going to that, one of the things that has been changing in going right back to accounting is private equity coming into accounting to enable some of the retiring generation to get out and enable the exits to happen that need to happen. And of course, as we all know, the next generation, there's fewer people in it, period, let alone enough people to be able to support the exiting partners, because you actually do need a leverage model to make that happen. So PE is coming in to kind of fill the gap in some ways. I'm just going to stop there and invite your comments on that.
Sure. So, and I have a lot of thoughts on it. Even though I'm only 25, I've been working in the accounting profession for like 25 years, since I was born. And I remember, some of my first accounting conferences, everybody was talking about succession planning. Every session was succession planning. And naively, I think I thought, well, everybody is focused on succession planning because that's what we're talking about. And the truth is that they went to these sessions, but then
Hmm.
nothing ever happened. And so
Hmm.
you come to this point where we have so much retirement in the profession, and they didn't take care of it. They didn't set themselves up for literally for succession or success. So what do? You close your firm, you have clients, you have staff. So what do you do sustainable? In comes private equity saying, I can save the day, or at least I can buy you out so you can have your retirement and have that life that you didn't have because you were working 100 hours a week for your whole career. Um, so it sounds great, right? But things that are too good to be true usually are. Um, a vast majority of the investment from private equity is going into technology, which makes a lot of sense, right? And that's probably where firms need it. And not even so much from a capital standpoint. Yes, they need it from a capital standpoint, but it's almost like they need the private equity to push them to make the technological changes that they may have been afraid to do before. Where private equity saying, "No, I want my money to go to this." Um,
Hmm.
so those are good things, but there's a lot of downside to it, right? And depending on the type of structure that you have and the deal, what are the expectations of the private equity firm? Certainly, it impacts culture. There's lots of conversations about how it impacts ethics, right? And trying to meet a bottom line, meeting profitability goals to serve investors, that might push the bounds on some ethical issues. I know lawyers have talked a lot about that. They're much more they push back a lot more on the idea of it. Um, the firms, so the private equity firms, right? There's some good theories behind it, right? The ones that can come in with a management company model, which we see a lot. We see a lot in the medical space, where right you have a management company come in and lets doctors be doctors, lets dentists be dentists, um, and to some extent that works. The problem is when you are trying to differentiate yourself to your employees, you're trying to recruit, and now you have somebody coming in that doesn't know your culture, that is coming in with something that might not completely align, and they want you to adapt because that's how they're funding it. And I don't think that firms are doing as much due diligence from a cultural standpoint as they would if they were doing a merger. Listen, we've seen lots of mergers where they didn't do it, and they don't end well. But on the private equity side, I think they're doing a lot less of that. Um, and does this investor make sense for me and my firm? And it's an interesting position because a lot of times the people who are making the decisions, they're on their way out, right? And it really depends on how much they care about their legacy and how much they care about the people that they're leaving behind. Um, I think it could be good, but I don't think it's the only alternative. And there's some firms who have done ESOPs, and are doing pretty well in terms of keeping it within the family, so to speak. I understand that there's not a lot of alternatives when you haven't planned well, right? But then that brings us back to the changing structure of not everybody wants to be a partner, and firms looking at saying, well, maybe we should switch to a more corporate model, give people, anybody, right, kind of like sell stock to whoever wants to buy it, operate from a management perspective, really truly from a corporate model that is developed within your culture, right? Versus, right, there's a difference between growing your own culture and just having somebody else come in and kind of take over and flatten what you have. And cases some cases might bring some very good things, but they don't private equity doesn't tend to be people first. And in a profession where talent is in such demand, you need to put your people first. I'm a big believer in the Wegmans model, right? You put your employees before your customer, and you're going to have happy customers.
Yeah. All of those things, I totally agree with you. In a lot of ways, the professional model is an old one, and some of that's by design. I think some of that is by uh, just lack of momentum, friction, and some of that really we should retain. I do believe. I mean, I think it's really hard to be a truly independent professional if you're answering to somebody for your bottom line. Although you're always answering to somebody for your bottom line, really. So who are you answering to? I mean, one of the things that came out of what you were saying, what I heard was it really depends on who you end up partnering with, which that could mean private equity. So do your diligence. That could mean selling to a larger firm. That could mean taking on new partners, whatever. And just because somebody is a a huge investment fund doesn't mean they can't be the right partner, but you better damn well know that they are or are not. Uh, it's not a panacea. You there's only a few of those people who are riding away into the sunset with their big checks. Everybody else has got to live with it for some period of time. And from my perspective, I've seen both. Right, I've seen people be very happy with private equity transactions, and I've seen people be extremely unhappy with private equity transactions as well. So I don't think we're here to vilify it, but
It depends who you ask within an organization, because the owners might be very happy, but the staff might be very unhappy, right? So even within a single firm, you might get very different reactions and emotions.
yeah, absolutely. You have to align interests, risks, and rewards. The the way that you want the transaction to happen. So we're talking about exit planning or the lack thereof, and a lot of your research in the past has been about values, and exit planning is all about value. Obviously, we're using those terms slightly differently, but but tell me how tell tell me about your work in the values area.
So it's funny. I don't even know how I started along this path, because I started on this path before I formalized the research on it. But I've developed a system of really using core values as the determining factor for all decision making in any type of organization. And these core values are not the kind that your marketing department comes up and slaps on a website. They really have to be things that leaders believe in and act, and they have to be very specific, right? And I've loved lots of examples and lots of stories where people say, right, we're innovative, right? Our core value is to be innovative, and then you ask them how, and they're like, well, we have one partner who's on TikTok. Okay. Yay. um, so not being able to really articulate what that means and say something like, okay, we're innovative. And that means that when we're faced with a client problem, we have a detailed process to go through the pros and cons and, those wild ideas and the breaking things to come up with a solution, right? And having that process is part of our innovation plan, right? And that's truly a core value. If you can't say why and you can't be specific, it may be a core value, but it might just be something that looks good on a website.
Hey, everybody. I want to take a second here to share something about who we are and why we make this show. These episodes are for my business colleagues out there running professional firms and serving clients with the same commitment and integrity that we do. But we know that as demand grows, scaling evaluation, accounting, or tax practice without sacrificing quality can be a real challenge. That's where Assurant Advisors provides a solution. Assurant Advisors partners with accounting, valuation, and tax firms by providing top-tier outsourced support, enabling firms to expand their capacity while maintaining high standards and consistency. Our team of experienced professionals has a strong track record of delivering reliable results that firms can trust. If you're looking to scale more efficiently and strengthen your firm's capabilities, you can learn more about Assurant Advisors through the link in the show notes. It's certainly not well enough understood to employ it in practice well enough. That's if you can't say it, then you can't do it.
If you can't say it, you can't do it. And, if you have strong values that are really well defined, you can use them to make every single decision within your organization. So I started my business almost 17 years ago, but I mean, I'm only 25, so I was just a baby.
Confident 8-year-old. Yes.
And so one of my friends asked me, so what kind of clients are you looking for, right? What's your ideal client? And my answer just naturally, I said, nice ones. And to this day, it's on my website that's a core value. And I have walked away from clients who that they're just not nice. Even if they're paying a lot, it's not worth it. And that is to me very important. And I feel like it's very specific, right? Like core value is work with nice people. Right? It's just end of story. Another core value of mine for my company is learn something new every day, right? Like it's very specific. And I can use those things to make decisions. Work hard, play hard. It is one of mine, right? So that can help me make a decision in terms of, do I give my team off, for the holidays? Yes, because there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of year-end stuff. But our core value is, is to play hard. And when else are you going to do that than the holidays? So there's so many different, those are mine, right? But firms can look different. They don't have to be cookie cutter, and they don't have to be one word. I think a lot of people get stuck into this again, that we need to put it on a chart on the wall. Innovation, family, community. And those are words, right? What is the actual meaning behind them? And if you go through this, your culture comes from that, right? And culture is fluid, but your core values shouldn't really change that much. They might change if you have a significant change in leadership, but they should be understood and bought into, not just from leadership, but from everybody. Even through your hiring process, making sure that the people you're hiring align with who you believe you are and what's important to you.
Yeah, and one example that you'd given me was kind of the reverse of one of the things you said. A good example of a value is no jerks. We don't work with jerks, either inside or outside the company. Uh, yeah, one for us, kind of the guiding principle, guiding value is this good for the team? That's kind of the epic question for us. Is it good for the team? If it is, then we do it. If it's not, then we don't do it. And that becomes a pre-decided decision because we already know what the outcome's going to be once we analyze the problem, basically, or the analyze the question.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. Uh, so, what about the use of core values, maybe in decision making, that would help drive the value of a private business? Because, hey, this podcast is all about max value, maximizing the value of a business, eventually getting towards exit. So, how does core values play into that and drive value?
I certainly think it ties into the brand, and I have a marketing background, and branding can sometimes be this woo woo, but the brands have value, right? And you're doing valuations. I'm sure that you're calculating what that is, and I think that's a really important one. How are you perceived in the marketplace, and right, you can tie actual numbers to that. Um, but even more so, like using your core values to develop a strong culture, the cost of losing one single employee is about equal to their salary. Right? You take the cost of recruiting, the cost of time lost, trying to train somebody. That's a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you take a mid-level CPA who's making about $100,000 a year. Certainly in California, where you are, I'm in New Jersey. That's a very reasonable or likely salary. Let's say you lose three people. That's $300,000.
Well, gosh, and let's not even think about the expanding that out. I mean, you're absolutely right. We sometimes look at the cost of assembled workforce as the value of what you've put together. And I don't know, let's take those three, say, mid-level CPAs, using the rule of three. Well, what about that $900,000 or $1 million worth of client revenue, client fees that they're not able to pursue that year, or the replacements that you have to find so expensively and train up are not going to be as good at uh, deriving that same revenue. There's going to be ramp up time where they're not as effective or not effective at all. And then of course the impact on the client. So there's even the downstream and indirect outcomes, the externalities even of that, in addition to all the very direct costs that you do actually have.
Yeah, and you can't, you bring up the point about clients, but you can't discount the fact that your core values impact your clients. And we won't get into a whole political conversation. But what I will say is that a lot of people, especially in turbulent political times, care about what you support politically. And I know in the old days, in the past, that was very taboo, and why would it ever come up? And I've spoken to lots of CPAs who said, well, like that shouldn't matter to my clients, but it does. Not to
Mm,
all of them, but to a lot of them it does. And that comes down to values, right? And there's kind of that cross of personal and professional values, but it's just an example of how, it may be an extreme example, but timely, of how you show up, and what you value can impact the type of client that you attract and keep. And right, we've all seen people who have done something stupid on social media, and what happens? They lose their clients, they lose their jobs. Um, and it's yes, people do stupid things, but sometimes it's just about what they believe. And if you don't believe what I believe, right, there's fundamental, it goes like some like those moral issues, right? Versus, right, we can argue about like, tariffs, right? Which could be I like to call that like a true political topic, right? You can argue what economists say, but that's a little bit different than morals. And I'm saying this not to be political, but because I've seen lots of people who have said, like, I don't want to work with the service provider because they don't align with my values. And I think it's just important. And I think it's something that firms need to think about. And I had this conversation actually at the Abacus meeting where we said, all right, like maybe you don't totally buy into that, but you should at least be talking to your staff about that. How do they know how to have those conversations if they come up? And I think we can't pretend like that doesn't happen because it's all about part of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you certainly can't pretend that the issue doesn't exist just because it doesn't. You wish it didn't, and frankly, hell, I wish it didn't. But at the same time, trying to connect with a client on a deeper level is often something that I try to do. Whether I'm talking to somebody who's politically right, left, center, whatever, uh, because of course we actually agree on more than we disagree on usually, and we all want what's best for our family and kids and workforce and the people we work with closely and all those things, such that we can disagree on policy all you like, and yes, there are things out there that are non-trivial, and I don't want to mean to trivialize anything, but you don't. I'm not your I'm not your pastor, your therapist, your whatever. That's not the role. I can still be your good professional advisor, and so can you. Uh, Yeah, no, I think that's really good, and I think being clear on the things that are truly important, maybe like showing up authentically, maybe that's super important. I mean, it should be. Maybe that's a super core value, like it is for our company. You'll know what we think, period. And if you don't like that, then you're not going to enjoy working with us, and vice versa. We're not going to enjoy working with you if we feel like we have to not be who we are. Uh, and at the same time, who we are hopefully isn't too obnoxious and in your face, and mostly just means we're going to be honest even if you don't want to hear it, rather than being a jerk about something.
It's interesting. I You talk about like showing up and like the relationship part of it, and I feel like the accounting profession, the AICPA, did such a good job of instilling this trusted advisor mentality into people, into the
Hmm.
public. And I'm in a lot of groups with entrepreneurs, and when everybody asks a pretty complicated question or even a simple question, everybody always says, ask your CPA. And I will tell you how many CPAs I've spoken to who are like, why would my client ask me that? Because the marketplace did such a good job in adopting this trusted advisor philosophy that people believe it. I mean, it's like great, right? It's like one of the best marketing campaigns ever after the Dare program. And accountants aren't taking advantage of that, I think.
Horrible. I'll speak for my profession on that point. Is most of us are mostly horrible most of the time, and and it's showing up. I will say there are more non CPA accountants out there than ever before, and I mean, there's always been a role for that, absolutely. Uh, but more people are deciding not to be CPAs than they used to be, and this episode wasn't really supposed to be about CPAs per se, but uh, yeah, there's a missed opportunity there, and it's been missed and being missed, and yeah, we're kind of a victim of our own success in a certain sense. We should be the people who are the financial therapists, if you will, and we should be the people who are, I always say, like, we should be the arbiters of financial truth. I really freaking believe that. So far, I've been done a really good job of not swearing on the podcast and keeping that going. But tell you what, we should be able to be the best referral partners out there because we're looking out for our clients. And again, even though I don't have clients that like tax clients who are coming back every single year, I do have some close relationships with clients, and I do look out for them as much as I would with with any friend or or teammate, and that's the way it's supposed to be, I think.
No, I agree, but I want to take a step further. Yes, the arbiters of financial truth, but also like steering the ship. And I
Mm,
think that's a missed opportunity. Like, you're not going to be the sole service provider, right? Companies need lots of service providers, but who's going to be the one steering the ship in terms of those relationships and bringing in the law firms and bringing in the insurance companies and the banks and the marketing people and any other professional that a company needs? Who is steering that ship? Because I get work from my CPA clients who refer it to me, because they get, right, like they go to their CPA and say, well, who should I hire, because they trust them, right? And it's
right.
a role that you should embrace, because not everybody's in that position. And like, a lot of us have to work harder to become the trusted advisor, simply because, I mean, I believe that I am the trusted advisor to my clients. And
Mm,
it's taken me a long time to build that relationship, and it's how I show up, and why that works. But I didn't have that huge marketing arm behind me that was saying that, 7 degrees business consulting is your trusted advisor, right? Business consulting is kind of this like arbitrary category, right?
yeah.
Whereas accounting firms, nope, like that's, you get that label.
Well, and I'll just say we earn that label. I'll just let me let me say that,
You probably.
but no, truly, it's something that there should be an inheritance with a profession where we pass down a legacy. Ooh, getting a little maudlin here, um, but yeah, it's got to mean something. So I think on that note we can stop the hard hitting questions, if you will. But I do have a couple of things I wanted to ask you, really just to get to know you a little bit. The first one being, w- tell me something that's not on your LinkedIn profile, your website profile, maybe one of those hobbies that you've forgotten about.
Oh, that's a good question. So I have a Cricut. Do you know what a Cricut machine is?
Mhm.
So I call myself the world's worst crafter, because I really am like the world's worst crafter. But so I have like diagnosed ADHD. So I do like start a lot of crafts, but I do like like making things, and I know I'm bad at it, but it's therapeutic. I started making bracelets and jewelry, like just costume stuff. It's good for my brain. And I just accepted that I'm not good at it, but it's just a way for me to get away from the technology, put the phone down, and just recharge.
Oh, I am with you. That only in my deeper into my career have I decided that I actually do need hobbies for real. Not okay, reading's a hobby, but that's not quite the same. Like I do wood carving because although also I am bad at it, it's gets your brain it accesses a different level of your brain that is not functioning the same way while we're doing a podcast or something. So that's nice. Um, okay, but I brought up reading a couple times and reading your book. What are you reading?
I'm actually, so I listen to a lot of books, partially because of the ADHD, partially because I just don't have time. So I'm actually listening to Dan Brown's new book. So I think I've read all of his books, and I had to wait like 2 months because it was like I get them from the library. That's like a really good tip for people. We're talking about value. like your local library is online in an app, and you don't have to actually go, and you can listen to audiobooks and read ebooks. But I am listening to the Dan Brown book, which I'm enjoying. And I'll tell you, I used to only listen to nonfiction and used to like try to read fiction. And then I realized, just again from a timing perspective, that I was missing out on some of the stories and that imagination that comes with fiction. And so I've been listening to a lot more of it. And again, it's like that brain break.
Absolutely. I haven't read. I haven't gotten that new Dan Brown, but he is pretty good. Um, okay. Well, cool. Is there any area of study or anything that you've learned recently that's kind of the just blows your mind?
Well, I mean, I'm a geek, and I do a lot of consulting, Zoho, CRM, ERP systems. I like technology, so I've been paying attention to AI, right?
Mm.
And like you say, what blows your mind? It blows my mind, and I've tried to invest more time in learning a little bit beyond just like ChatGPT, and really trying to understand, all the capabilities. And I mean, it really is amazing. And what I really try to think about is how how quickly it is going to replace things, and maybe some people don't. So I read a lot about that, right? Like the
Hmm.
the impact that, and people not paying attention to that, and not from a fear perspective, but just from a like a sociological perspective. To me, it's just really interesting, to go down those rabbit holes. I do tend to go down rabbit holes. I mean, I think you probably could tell that I am interested in politics a lot. And so a lot of that blows my mind. But I'm a huge believer in, like you say, oh, you're biased. No, I mean, maybe I am. I have my beliefs, but I am huge into fact checking. Like, I will go down a fact checking rabbit hole, and to me that's really important. But you learn so much. We were talking about like tariffs, right? And so I educated myself on the history of tariffs. I like economics. I also listened to the Freakonomics podcast. um, so like I went down that rabbit hole. This isn't really so much about mind blowing, but it was just about learning the history of it, and not just from a headline. So I do that, right? I like to learn. That's my core value: learn something new every day.
Well, it sounds like you might fill up your quota pretty easily once a day. Uh, Smoot Hawley Act. That was the tariff one, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Um, yes, originally, during like the Great Depression, and this it didn't work then, it doesn't work now. But so I'll tell you the interesting thing that I discovered was that economists don't always believe, like, or agree on things. It's one of those things that most of them
Sure.
agree on. And again, going down my rabbit hole of research, finding not only just like nonpartisan but bipartisan information on it, which you don't actually see. Bipartisan information that agrees, right? On like there's things from like the Bush Library talking about tariffs, and it's one of those things that was mind blowing, that there's so much consensus, and something that
Yeah.
economists don't always agree on things. And I actually love reading about um, economists disagreeing on things, because they're not emotional, right? That's the cool thing, is that they're not really emotional, like some other things, but they're coming at it from different perspectives. And I think that's how I try to approach things. I know that was like very long winded. Um, that is the ADHD in me, which I have to know about things. So
Well, hyper focus is definitely part of that part of the spectrum too. Um, okay. Well, where can people find you if you want to be found?
so I am on LinkedIn as Jessica Lee Levin. I am on Threads as Jessica Levin Sullivan. That is where you can see my political nonsense. Um, I'm on Facebook too as Dr. J Lev, but I'm pretty accessible. I'm also as you mentioned, I'm the COO of Abacus Worldwide. So you can find me there, and also CEO of 7 Degrees. So I'm online, so I'm very accessible, and I love when people reach out, and I love having conversations. So I really do encourage your listeners to, if you have a question for me, if you just want to chat, if you want to share something, if you want to debate tariffs, uh, I'm around.
Uh, okay, actually, I now do have another question for you, and is can I call you Dr. J Lev from now on? Because
Absolutely.
that's awesome. Alrighty. Well, cool. Dr. J Lev, I've really enjoyed having you here on the podcast, and this has been a great episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was fun.
Awesome. That's a wrap. You've been listening to Max Value Podcast, and if this podcast provided any interesting information, hit that subscribe button, smash like, and drop a comment below. I'm Ben Town with Assurant Advisors, and we'll catch you next time.